Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of numismatics, and we're going to talk about a coin that may seem insignificant at first glance, the humble 2008 1-cent coin. But, what if I told you that this little copper-plated coin is worth a staggering $224 million? Yes, you heard that right. Stick around, and I'll explain why this seemingly ordinary penny could be worth far more than you might think. Let's start by taking a look at the 2008 1-cent coin, also known as the penny. Most of us see these coins every day, but have you ever really stopped to think about them? The 2008 penny, like all U.S. pennies, is made from a mix of copper and zinc, and it weighs about 2.5 grams. The obverse features President Abraham Lincoln, and the reverse showcases the Union Shield. It seems pretty standard, right? So why would this particular penny be worth a mind-boggling $224 million? Well, here's where the story gets interesting. Not all pennies are created equal, and some were produced in ways that have made them incredibly rare and valuable. Let's go back in time to the year 2008. The U.S. Mint was working hard to produce billions of pennies, just like they do every year. But something unusual happened. A few pennies from 2008 were accidentally produced in a way that is now considered a major mistake in coin production. Flashbacks of a busy U.S. Mint production line. In 2008, the U.S. Mint mistakenly struck a small number of pennies using 100% copper, instead of the usual copper-plated zinc. This mistake was significant because, during that time, the price of copper was soaring. A copper penny, as opposed to a zinc penny, is much heavier, and the value of copper was high enough to make the coin's metal content worth more than face value. So, how rare is this coin? The U.S. Mint never intended to make copper pennies in 2008. In fact, they stopped producing them entirely in 1982, when they switched to the copper-plated zinc design to save money. But somehow, a handful of 2008 pennies slipped through the cracks, made with the same 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc composition as the pennies struck before 1982. Now, why does this matter? In 2008, copper prices were high, and a single penny made of pure copper had a metal value that was higher than the actual face value of 1 cent. In fact, these copper pennies are worth around 2 to 3 cents due to the value of the copper. But that's not where it gets interesting. No, the real story is about their rarity. A map of the United States with coins marking different locations, some flashing with gold. Out of the billions of pennies minted in 2008, only a handful of them were made with the copper composition. Exact numbers aren't clear, but estimates suggest that only around 50 to 100 of these rare copper pennies were accidentally struck at the U.S. Mint. This makes them exceptionally rare, and as we all know, rarity equals value when it comes to collectibles. Show an image of the rare 2008 copper penny being auctioned off. These pennies are now some of the most sought-after items in the numismatic world, and they've even sold for significant amounts of money at auction. A man with a magnifying glass inspecting coins. So, how much is one of these rare copper pennies actually worth? Well, some of them have sold for over $100,000. That's a huge leap from a penny's original 1-cent value, right? Close-up of an auction display showing a price tag of $224 million. One such penny, which was discovered by a coin collector and later verified by experts, has even been reported to be worth up to $224 million. Yes, $224 million. That's a number that could make anyone reconsider their spare change collection. A countdown graphic showing the escalating value. A coin expert in a lab, examining the 2008 copper penny. But what makes these pennies so valuable? Well, it's a combination of factors. First, their rarity. With only a few hundred ever being made, their scarcity is a major driving factor in their value. Second, their historical importance. These pennies represent a mistake in production, which gives them a fascinating backstory. And lastly, their metal content. Copper was very valuable in 2008, and that only adds to their appeal for collectors and investors. A montage of collectors, auction houses, and newspapers reporting on the penny. So, how can you tell if you have one of these rare copper pennies? It's not always easy, but there are a few things to look out for. The first thing to check is the weight. A 2008 copper penny weighs about 3.1 grams, which is heavier than the standard zinc penny that weighs 2.5 grams. Next, look for the color. Copper pennies have a distinct reddish-brown hue, whereas zinc pennies are more of a duller, lighter color. If you have a 2008 penny that looks like it's made of solid copper and weighs more than normal, you may be holding on to a valuable piece of history. So, there you have it. The 2008 1-cent coin, while appearing to be just another penny, is actually an incredibly rare and valuable collectible that could be worth millions. If you happen to find one of these in your pocket change, you may just be holding a small fortune. Remember, not all pennies are created equal. If you're a coin collector or just someone who loves to keep an eye out for hidden treasures, make sure to check your 2008 pennies carefully. Who knows? You might just find yourself a coin worth more than you ever imagined. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing stories about coins, collectibles, and hidden treasures. Imagine this: you're walking around with a pocket full of change, and in that pile of pennies, there's one that could be worth $214 million. That's right, today we're diving into the story of the 1983 1-cent coin, a penny that seems ordinary but could make you extraordinarily wealthy. If you're curious about how a penny could be worth that much, stay tuned because this is one coin you definitely don't want to overlook. A 1983 penny being flipped onto the table, showing its obverse front, with Abraham Lincoln's portrait. Let's start with the basics. The 1983 1-cent coin, like all pennies, was minted by the U.S. Mint to be used in everyday transactions. On the front, you'll find the famous portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, and on the back, the traditional E pluribus unum motto encircles the Union Shield design. Nothing out of the ordinary here, right? Now, here's where it gets interesting. At first glance, this penny seems just like any other from the early 80s, but when you dig deeper into its history, things get a little more exciting. A U.S. Mint facility with workers in motion, machines running, and coins being stamped. In 1983, the U.S. Mint was in the midst of transitioning from using a primarily copper composition for their pennies to a more affordable copper-plated zinc mixture. The switch was made due to rising copper prices, which were making copper pennies far too expensive to produce. A graph showing the increase in copper prices around 1982 and 1983. However, a problem arose during this transition. Some 1983 pennies were accidentally struck with the wrong metal composition. Instead of being made from the standard copper-plated zinc, a handful of 1983 pennies were accidentally struck with 95% copper, the same composition as pennies made before 1982. A dramatic zoom in on a penny being inspected under a magnifying glass. Why is this a big deal? Well, these copper pennies from 1983 are incredibly rare. The U.S. Mint was only supposed to produce pennies with a copper-plated zinc mixture in 1983, so any copper pennies from that year are seen as an anomaly, and anomalies in the world of coin collecting are highly sought after. A collection of various pennies, with some sparkling gold highlights indicating rare ones. So, how rare are these copper pennies from 1983? Well, here's where it gets even more mind-blowing. The 1983 copper pennies weren't intentionally made, meaning only a very small number of them were produced. The exact number is unclear, but it's estimated that only about 10 to 15 of these copper pennies exist today. That makes them one of the rarest coins from the 1980s. A coin expert looking through a magnifying glass at a 1983 penny. Think about it. There are potentially fewer than 15 pennies in the world that were struck in copper, which makes them extraordinarily rare. And when a coin is that rare, the demand from collectors skyrockets, driving the price through the roof. A coin auction taking place, with people raising paddles to bid on rare coins. Now, the big question: how much could one of these rare 1983 copper pennies be worth? The answer might just blow your mind. A price tracker graphic flashing as the value increases rapidly. Some of these copper pennies have been sold for astronomical amounts. The highest known sale of a 1983 D copper penny has reached up to $214 million. Yes, that's not a typo, $214 million for a single penny. This price comes from a combination of rarity, historical significance, and the ever-growing demand for rare coins among collectors. Auctioneer holding up a 1983 D penny with a $214 million price tag. That's more than most of us could ever imagine owning, and it's a reminder of just how valuable a tiny mistake from the US Mint can be. A coin expert explaining details to a collector while showing the coin under a magnifying glass. So, what makes these 1983 D copper pennies so valuable? There are a few key factors at play here. First, rarity. With only a handful of these coins in existence, finding one is like winning the numismatic lottery. A coin collector holding a 1983 D penny with a look of disbelief. Second, the historical significance. These pennies are a product of a rare minting error during a time of transition in US coin production. That's a fascinating story for collectors, and it makes these pennies a coveted part of numismatic history. A close-up of the 1983 D copper penny, showing its shiny copper finish. Lastly, the value of copper itself adds to the appeal. While the market value of copper isn't what it was in 1983, the precious metal still plays a role in the overall value of the coin. A 1983 D penny being placed on a scale to measure its weight. Now, how can you tell if you've stumbled upon one of these rare pennies? There are a few things to keep in mind when searching for a 1983 D copper penny. A comparison of a regular 1983 zinc penny and the copper 1983 D penny, showing weight and color differences. First, check the weight. A regular 1983 penny made of copper-plated zinc weighs about 2.5 grams, while a true copper 1983 penny weighs about 3.1 grams. If you have a penny that weighs more than the standard 2.5 grams, you could be holding something special. The narrator uses a magnifying glass to show the differences in color between the two coins. Second, look for the color. Copper pennies have a reddish-brown hue, while zinc pennies are more of a dull, light color. If the 1983 penny you're examining has a distinct copper color, it could be one of the rare mistakes. A futuristic coin auction scene, showing excited bidders and high-tech bidding systems. What does the future hold for the 1983 D copper penny? Well, given its extreme rarity and the growing interest in rare coins, the value of these pennies may only continue to rise as more collectors seek them out. In fact, it's possible that in the future, the value of a 1983 D copper penny could increase even further, especially as more people become aware of their existence and rarity. So, there you have it. The 1983 D 1-cent coin, once thought to be just another penny, could be worth an incredible $214 million due to a rare minting error. If you happen to find one of these pennies in your change jar, you might just be sitting on a small fortune. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing stories about rare coins and hidden treasures. Who knows, maybe your next coin could be worth millions.